makeup, economically, what language people spoke. We are quickly becoming gentrified. I can see it every day there, and I would say that East Boston is becoming more divided in terms of where people live that are of a certain socioeconomic class. My neighborhood has become gentrified. The only reason I'm still here is because I moved here a number of years ago and have a landlord that values having a tenant who takes care of the property and doesn't bother them unless there's something important. I would say that the positive here is that people value the diversity and want to protect it. The biggest issue has been displacement. We've seen a large percentage of the population that's had to move to Chelsea, Lynn, Lawrence, and that safety net that they had here, being surrounded by people they knew and a community they knew, is slowly disappearing and can affect them in other negative ways. There are several organizations that work with the city to try to either mitigate or offer other options for housing and finding to resolve some of the issues around housing issues in particular. I think it's hard when you have when you have a minority of a minority. I think it can be very difficult. So what we see, so I'm a member of a community association. What we constantly see is people coming in and wanting to build 9 units, 9 units, 9 units. They don't want to add the affordable option because once you build that 10th unit, you actually have to build 13 units in order to make the money work, because you're basically building a unit which you're not getting the full market value of. One of the things I'd like to see is the city start to levy that 13% across an entire amount, across a developer's portfolio. One of the things that we've seen here is that a few years ago, you could buy land in East Boston cheap. Then you could build market rate or luxury housing, sell it, and make a huge profit. Now what's happened because of that, people only wanted to build luxury because they figured out people would buy luxury in East Boston. So every unit that you're seeing being built is luxury. There's no middle class units being built anymore.
So something like
When a 2-bedroom condo down the street from me goes for $750,000, we're not just talking about diversity in terms of in terms of immigrant populations. We're talking about diversity in terms of economic class. We're talking about turning this part of Boston into the South End, because that's what you would pay in the South End. One of the things that's happened here in East Boston is people bought land in the 70s, 80s, even sometimes going back to the 60s, got approval for development, and then didn't do anything with it for 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. If we were to levy a tax that says if an area stays fallow for more than, say, 3 to 5 years, you're going to pay an additional fee, people would be more likely to do development as opposed to sitting on it until the money is really good. Some of the luxury apartments that are built here were approved in the 1990s, and it took over 20 years for them to be built. So that's ridiculous. People who are above the AMI, the medium income, but don't make enough money to be considered to buy a luxury unit. Until those people move out, and then you have a bunch of empty units around here, and the city can't afford to keep the schools going, they're not going to consider it an issue. But they're losing the middle class here in East Boston, in addition to losing the diversity across cultures. You're losing the economic diversity as well. Unfortunately, a large percentage of the population that is non-English speaking here in East Boston is not legal, and because of that, they don't get counted and they don't get worried about. And because they don't get counted and don't get worried about, when things affect them, people don't see it as the tip of the iceberg. Like, it's starting here, and you should react because it's only going to get bigger. They wait until it gets much further down. My biggest fear is that this is going to turn into the South End. It's going to turn into rich, white, and we're going to lose and that we're no longer going to be a neighborhood.